I am pleased to welcome you all on this annual grade program of CTC and WIRC. In first session, we have with us Vipin Bhai. He will take us through customs and excise provisions related to provisions in financial sector. I am here to say a few words about WIRC of ICI. By Sunil Patodia taken over as the new chairman of WIRC on 25th February. And at WIRC, we have planned certain things for our members in over and over what we are presently doing. The capacity building, which is area which is talked about since last decade. This year we are planning to have one-to-one interactive program at either BKC or Kaplan, where our professional brothers, maybe CA or maybe CA with other professional brothers, can take their funds at larger level and to sort out all these contingencies in such capacity building. They will speak to expert panel with prior appointment. So whatever difficulties we are facing in expanding our firm size and our capacity can be sorted out, and we can serve our society in a better way. So as we generally say, why only big 4 white on and big 500. So I think with this we can start, and in a year or two we can have number of professional firms which can serve to the society with all various services under one roof. So with these words, I welcome you all, because I have technical, we will be understanding with Vipin Bhai, and WIRC we have Bhagat Bhavan going together. I will be giving in between with kind permission of Vipin Bhai. I welcome you all and wish you all good, and thank you very much. Now I request Pranav Bhai to give his opening remarks and keep his program.
Thank you, Patodia ji. Respected Shri Sunil Patodia ji, Chairman WIRC, Shri Sushruth Chitle ji, Secretary WIRC Nasi, learned faculty Shri Vipin Jain ji, President of Chamber of Tax Consultants CA Paras Savla, and dear fellow delegates, wishing you all a very good morning. Hope yesterday you all must have enjoyed your holy day, which will bring in more colors and cheers to your life. Just as during Holi, we burn the evils of the past. Every year, the Union government, through its budget exercise, tries to burn the evil effects of the past budgets and bring in new provisions and new amendments in law, just to bring more cheer and color to our lives, and especially to the professionals who are very much engrossed in the budget amendments and the provisions, and try to find out the nitty-gritties of the provisions. And to dwell on these nitty-gritties of the various provisions, all of us, the delegates, I'm sure that all of you must have read the provisions in detail already, and we have come here for a fine analysis of the provisions applicable for the future. To deal on these provisions, we have two eminent faculties with us. They have been with us in the last 4 to 5 years, and both these speakers, Advocate Vipin Jain and CA A.R. Krishnan ji, have been speaking from this forum jointly. This program has been organized by WIRC and Chambers in the last 6 years, and both these faculties have been together for all these years, and year on year we will look to see them together on this dais. Vipin Jain sir will be speaking on the provisions of customs, excise, standard credit rules, and certain provisions relating to penalties under the Service Tax Act and a few other provisions in the Service Tax. And the the rest of the amendments will be taken up by CA Krishnan. With these few words, I welcome you all once again to this workshop on indirect taxes and wish you all a very happy learning. Thank you very much. I will now call upon Ankit Kedia to kindly introduce Sri Vipin Jain.
Good morning, friends, members of the desk and on the desk. It's a great pleasure to introduce Sri Vipin Jain. He is a regular speaker at Chamber of Tax Consultant. He is practicing advocate and a partner of Tax Law Chamber. The firm specializes in handling indirect tax litigation. He is also a CA by qualification and he has got ranks in Inter CA and Final CA. He regularly presents papers on central excise, service tax and customs related issues in seminars and workshops organized by Institute of Chartered Accountants, Chamber of Tax Consultants, ECS and various other bodies. With this brief introduction, I now request everybody to give him a round applause for I now request Sunil ji to give him a memento as a mark of our love and affection. And I now request Vipin ji to take over the session.
Good morning, friends. For the last 4-5 years, I've been coming here, and I must say at the very outset that this is one gathering and one meeting I look forward to every year, because here I find people, coming to really understand and the final nuances of the amendments. I've attended a few more seminars and talks, and the quality of gathering, the quality of the audience, is sometimes such that you don't feel that you are talking, that you are, you can talk of a final point in that audience, because generally it is, people who are more interested in knowing the broader picture rather than the fine print. So I always look forward to this meeting, and as Pranab was saying, each time it is me and Krishnan for the last 4-5 years, and I must say that things should change in due course. We should have more people coming here rather than the same old people. Krishnan has a different way and a style of presentation, and I love that style. And I don't want to emulate it here, because then I'll be accused of copying. He walks around, and I call him the Jay Leno of our chamber. Jay Leno, I don't know how many of you have not seen it. Jay Leno show in the US is like where, it's very interactive, and the gentleman walks and plays it by the ear, talks extempore, and very interesting show. Krishnan makes it interesting, and I keep trying to learn from him, but not reach anywhere near where he is. Friends, today's topic for me is, of course, uh, some portion of the indirect tax amendments. So I will be speaking on customs, excise, and part of the service tax amendments. The remaining part of the service tax amendments will be taken care of by Krishnan. Friends, I must begin by saying that this year, because GST is around the corner, the number of changes on the direct taxes are not many. There are far many changes on the direct tax side, and there is frankly not too much to be said this time. There are not too many points to be discussed. And next year, when we have, hopefully, if we have GST, then it will be a whole new law, and that will be a different, experience altogether. This year, the changes, I have tried to group them together in such a way that there is no need to look at each of them individually, rather than, one can look at them, as common amendments to excise, customs, and whatever is not common, I have tried to deal with separately. Before I go into these changes, a little broad overview is required of the budget and the revenue figures this time that we have had in the budget. I need to give this broad overview for the reason that I find that the budget exercise, the budget speech is more or less becoming a game of marketing, in the sense that you just say a few good things, that I'm giving you this, I'm giving you this, I'm giving you that, and hide whatever you are taking. So I was reading the speech and I said, my God, he's giving away so much of benefits directly. Like he said, I'm giving one exemption here, 100 crores, 50 crores, 200 crores, 500 crores. And then he said in the end that, Minister said in the end, total exemptions given, benefit given 8,500 crores on the direct tax side. Then he said indirectly, the extra revenue from the service tax and other things will be 23,000 crores. And therefore is a 15,000 crores net impact. So people, everybody nowadays listens to the budget and sees on the TV, and one eye on the budget, one eye on the market, how the market reacting. Only 15,000 is not much, it's very reasonable. Whereas when one reads the entire budget paper, you realize that there is, absolutely a total disconnect between what is said and what the figures are. I want to give the figure to you for the audience, because all of us are CAs here and we can understand it better. Actually, it's a simple fund flow statement which somebody should present, and there should be a format in the budget which people can understand that this is how we will collect, this is what we are going to spend. If you will see here, on the indirect tax side, the budgeted figure for 2014-15, the sum total of all the three figures is 542 crores is the budgeted figure, the revised budgeted. And the next year's figure is 6,47,000. So we are talking about an increase of 1,05,593 crores. That is the increase in the indirect tax collection in this year. So it's not 23,000, it's actually 1,05,000. Likewise, on the direct tax side, it's increased by 92,367. Now, this can be explained, the difference can be explained by saying that, look, I expect the economy to grow, okay, GDP to grow, and therefore there will be an automatic increase. But my tax proposals per se do not increase, but this will increase indirectly. Now, that again doesn't make too much of sense to me, because if one looks at the figures, you are looking at an increase in the indirect taxes of 19.47%. Now, our GDP is not going to grow anywhere near that. Nobody's case that will grow anywhere near 19.47. And direct taxes 13.09. Now, I find this entire picture here so alarming. I said that somebody has on the floor of parliament said a few things and people have accepted it as on face value. But I find an inherent contradiction and an inherent problem in the figures which are rolled out like this. And mind you, the minister made a statement that I am known for my intellectual honesty. So I found that more appalling. I found a string of humor in the entire, presentation also. When it came to direct taxes, he said, I intend to reduce corporate taxes from 30% to 25%. And I would have done so in this year. But I don't want to spring off surprises like this. I want to have stability in a regime. It's like telling a wife that I want to give you a gift and I want to give it to you next year. I don't want to shock you by giving it this year. Now, if you are going to give a gift, you don't need to give notice. You need to give notice if you are going to add. If you had said, look, I want to increase taxes to 40%, but I can't do it this year, I must give you notice, and I'll do it over the next 4 years, it would have made sense. He says, I want to reduce, but I am constrained because I must not spring surprises on you. I think people are going to get a heart attack with that news that, okay, my tax has got reduced. So there is an element of humor in the entire speech. The speech ends, with a Upanishad, Sanskrit Upanishad shlok, which essentially says, one of the English translations I was reading in the budget paper, it says, let everybody be healthy, let everybody, see what is beneficial. So I think the whole theme was that I will show in the budget whatever is beneficial. And whatever is not beneficial, I don't have to say. And he says this is intellectual honesty because I am telling you right away, I am not going to tell you what is not good for you. So the whole exercise, budget exercise I find nowadays is all about, how a huge population which is watching it, the media, the budget on the media must react. So imagine a reaction of the what reaction will you have from the people if you said I'm going to give 8,500 crores worth of direct benefit and indirectly I'll take away 1,05,000 crores worth. So that will not sound very nice. So he doesn't say it. So friends, this is the broad picture I want to give. Now I come to one of the topics which was not assigned to me. This also is not a topic. I want to just talk about the rollout of GST. Because rollout of GST is the big event that we are waiting for. It's a transformative event. The ministers say that this is going to change the whole game. And it will add a percentage or two to the GDP growth itself. This is the thing that we are waiting for. And the rollout is expected on 1st of April 2016. Now friends, I feel, notwithstanding what the minister says, this to be a very tall claim. Now why is it a tall claim in the present circumstances? Just a small little discussion on that. GST is not going to be a mere, it is not enough to just have an act called GST Act. That would have been very easy. You could have just made a bill, introduced the bill, passed the act, and then you could have implemented right away. You need to amend the constitution first. Because constitutionally there is a list 7, which needs to be amended so that the center gets the power to levy taxes on certain transactions which are today in the exclusive domain of the state. So that needs a constitutional amendment. Now what is the constitutional amendment required and how is it passed is a point to be noted, because that is something which is very crucial to the entire understanding of the GST rollout. Good morning, Krishna. Our friend is here. So now there are two impediments I see in this entire rollout process. One is that under the Constitution, Article 368, any amendment to the Constitution must be passed by both the houses of Parliament by a majority of total membership. So if you have 542 MPs in the Lok Sabha, you need to have at least 272 votes in Lok Sabha to pass in the Lok Sabha. Likewise in Rajya Sabha, that is the total membership. And in addition to this condition, at least 2/3 of the members present should vote for it. Now you are all aware about the last few days events where the president's address was given and then a thank you motion has to be given, which basically only says we thank you for this. Even that the opposition said, no, you please put I thank you subject to 1, 2, 3, whatever. And that simple motion could not go through. Now imagine how we are going to have Rajya Sabha clearing by 2/3 majority a constitutional amendment bill. So I feel that is a very big challenge, very huge challenge. Now, even if the challenge is to be surpassed and overcome politically, because ultimately there must be consensus amongst parties and they must agree to clear it, it may take longer than what we anticipate. Because they will time it properly. Each time an election comes in a particular state, the government becomes so aggressive against the opposition that they become cutty. Within no time, they're all cutty with each other. They don't talk to each other after that. Then, if elections are won, Mr. Modi comes back to the parliament and says, no, let's forget about the election, let's become friends again. So you become friends and start talking nice stuff. Again, when one more election comes, again they start giving abuses to each other. So, in this entire game, the relationship between the opposition and the present government is got so strained now that they are not able to see eye to eye on any subject. So I do not see how a constitutional amendment will go through both the houses with this kind of majorities. Point number one. Point number two is that even if it is done, after this constitutional amendment bill or the constitutional amendment has to be cleared by 50% of the states. Otherwise it does not become a law. The constitution amendment will not get the president's assent unless the state legislatures approve of the amendment. At least 50% of the state must approve. So you have the two houses of parliament in center, and then all the state legislatures must approve. Now it has to be tabled in various state legislatures. It has to be accepted or not passed. And after that, it is the president who will give an assent. After the assent is given, then a bill has to be introduced. The GST law. There have to be rules, regulations, the framework, and the infrastructure, the administration. Now that's a tall order for 1 year. So friends, I have my great apprehensions about this date, 1/4/2016. It sounds more like a wish list, and I don't think it is a credible date for implementation. We'll see in the next 1 year what happens. Now I come down to, what are the amendments which have been made in this year to bring it closer to GST? One amendment, as we can all know, is that they've increased the service tax from 12.36 to 14%, with the rider saying that we can add 2 more % towards Swachh Bharat levy. So you will have a service tax levy at 16% in the course of the year. Maybe not on all the commodities, all the services, but many services. So from 12.3 to 16% is the first amendment, moving it closer to the GST. Now why is this differential between goods and services? We all know that on goods we have excise and VAT. On services we have only service tax. So that is why there is a differential. And if we are talking about 20% rate of GST for goods, then that will comprise of say 12% excise and 8% state VAT, 20% like this. Service tax is only 12%, so it has to move up. So it's moving up to 16% in the course of the year, so that next year it can become 20%, goods and services. Now I'll come straight to the amendments, which are common to both customs and excise. The legislative amendments essentially, one second, I'll ask you. Okay, sorry. Common amendments. There are 3 common amendments which apply to both the laws. One is the advanced ruling facility, is at last extended to resident firms also. This is a topic we have been discussing each year, that initially the advanced ruling facility was given only to foreign entities or NRIs proposing to set up business in India. It was not available to Indian companies at all. That was quite illogical, that foreigners need to have certainty, we don't need to have certainty. Like that, over time, they have been extending this facility to government companies and then to corporations and public limited companies, and now it is brought to resident firms. So more or less everybody now who proposes to start a business, proposes to import or proposes to manufacture goods, including proposes to produce, render services. So this is a facility which has been extended across the board to all the three laws: customs, central excise and service tax. So now everybody is entitled to go to the advanced ruling authority and apply for advanced ruling. Settlement commission provisions. There are a lot of amendments in the bill. If you see the bill, you will find there are too many amendments on that. But most of them are amendments aimed at knocking off some redundant provisions. So they are not relevant. What is relevant is only one provision, which says that if a case, if you're all aware that settlement commission cannot entertain a petition in respect of a proceeding which has been remanded back. So supposing a show cause was issued, adjudication order was passed, and an appeal was filed in the tribunal, and the matter was sent back from the tribunal back for adjudication. So technically again the show cause is pending. So at the pendency of show cause notice, you can go for settlement. Now at this stage people used to go to settlement saying that my show cause is pending. Earlier we could go even when the matter had been sent back from the tribunal. But that provision they had amended many years back, saying that if there is a remand back on an appeal or revision by any appellate authority, including the court, then settlement commission cannot be an option for you. Now the word in appeal or revision has caused a bit of a concern, because if supposing one has challenged the writ, a show cause came, and somebody straight away went to the High Court and challenged the writ in the High Court. Now that is neither an appeal nor a revision. And then the High Court sent it back saying that no, we don't entertain this show cause notice, go back to adjudication. The new amendment says that even if it is not revision or appeal, if the matter has been sent back, from any court, including a writ court, then the settlement application cannot be filed. So that means now, in short, to simplify it is this, that you cannot go to settlement commission if the show cause notice has been challenged in a writ, and if the matter is sent back by the High Court back to the adjudicating authority for deciding. So that is another impediment which has been imposed in the settlement commission procedure. Now the most common amendment and the most significant amendment in this budget, like last year the most significant amendment was the pre-deposit, mandatory pre-deposit provision, and we spent a lot of time discussing that. This year, the most significant amendment is the overall of the penalty provisions everywhere, whether it is customs, excise or service tax. Now, the existing provisions some provisions have been deleted, some are proposed to be added, some are amended. So there is a huge lot of changes, both on the Act as well as in the rules. Now, I try to simplify this because if I go into the individual provisions, it will become very messy and difficult to understand. So I will, instead of looking at the provisions, simplify the provisions and the whole concept such that it can be straight away grasped, and one can just remember that this is what the penal provisions are. And then one can, whenever you have a case, you can look up the section and then read up. So the summary of the entire thing is this. One can divide all the amendments. Now, let us divide this penalty provisions into two parts. Penalty provisions under the customs and central excise laws, we can divide into two parts. One is cases where there is no fraud, suppression or misstatement. And other are cases where there is a fraud suppression. The penal consequences will be different in the two situations. Now, where there is no fraud, suppression or misstatement, then the provision has become benevolent. This time the provisions have become benevolent. There is now an upper cap on the penalty at 10% of the duty amount or 5,000 rupees, whichever is higher. It used to be 50% somewhere, it used to be 100% somewhere. So the upper cap is reduced from 50% or 100% to 10% or 5,000 rupees. So this is 100% a benevolent provision. It still does not meet the expectations of my friend Krishnan here. Mr. Krishnan feels that where there is no fraud suppression, that means there is no malified, there should be no penalty. Like in income tax, you just have interest, and here you have very high interest rate of 30%. So there is a need to have penalty. I agree with him, but I'm sure Mr. Jaitley will listen to him next time and knock off this 10% also. But at least they have moved in the right direction. So from 150, it has come down to 10%. Now this is simple. Now there is a further carrot which is doled out now. Now this carrot is a common theme throughout and all the amendments. The carrot is that if you pay the entire amount of tax and interest within 30 days, before the issue of notice or within 30 days after the issue of notice, then this 10% also goes away. Then there is no penalty. So you pay up the amount of interest with tax before the issue of notice or after the issue of notice in 30 days, there is no penalty at all, the entire 10% goes away. Now in case you miss out the opportunity and an order is passed, adjudication or order is passed, then you have another facility, another option. But fine, you pay up within 30 days of the adjudication order, the amount of tax, interest, and then your penalty will get reduced to 25% of the penalty imposed. Now the maximum is 10%. So that 25 will become 2.5%. So 25% of 10%. That means if you pay tax, interest and 2.5% within 30 days of adjudication order, at least your penalty is capped at 2.5%. Now, the first impulse is, oh, that is admitting of a liability. Now, the good thing is that it doesn't talk of admission of liability, which means you can keep on contesting. All you're doing is you're prepaying the tax and interest and some penalty so as to prevent, as well as put an upper cap on the penalty. So it's not as if you lose your right to fight a matter, or you will not get a refund of the amount paid if you succeed in appeal or further up. You will do all that will happen. But prepayment will lead to a benefit which is in the form of an upper cap on penalty. So it's a very good provision. It's an excellent provision. And it is time to look at this option for the reason that not only you have a carrot here, unfortunately along with this carrot on this side is a very big stick also on the other side, which is a 30% interest rate. So if you are contesting a matter today, and God forbid you lose the case after 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, the liability of interest will far exceed your tax liability. Your return on the business may be 8%, 10%, but you will be paying 30% every year towards interest. And in addition to that, you have this penalties also on top of you. So therefore, it makes sense today to review all the existing cases that one has and say, all right, there is a 50% chance of winning, or a 40% chance of winning, or a 60% chance of winning, depending upon each person's risk appetite and the cost of capital that each business is employing. One should take a call to say, oh, let us first repay this under protest, pay the amount of tax and interest, cap the penalty, and also avoid the likelihood of a 30% interest on you. Now, friend, this is the provision where there is no fraud, no suppression, no mistake. So, in these cases, the upper cap of penalty is 10%. Even that 10% goes away if you pay the disputed amount of tax and interest before the issue of notice or after 30 days after the issue of notice. Now, what happens if there is a fraud, suppression, or mistake? Even there is a benefit available now on prepayment, and this is also very attractive. The penalty remains 100% of the tax or duty if there is a fraud or suppression or mistake. Now that penalty is not changed, there is no change in that. But now two options are given. One option is if you decide to pay this penalty, you decide to pay the tax, interest and 15% penalty within 30 days of the issue of notice. Then you have an upper cap of penalty at 15%. So from 100% it reduces to 15% if tax, interest and 15% of the amount of due tax or duty is deposited within 30 days of the issue of notice. That is the first option. The second option is that if you do not wish to deposit that and you want to contest it till adjudication order comes, then one can pay within 30 days. The amount of penalty will increase from 15 to 25%. So if you pay 25% of the penalty, then full tax or duty, full interest and 1/4 as penalty you pay after adjudication. Your penalty is capped. Your penalty will not go beyond 1/4. That's again a good provision. Now, what has also happened in this entire thing is that earlier there was a provision which used to say that if you pay tax, if you pay the duty with interest and 1/4 penalty before the issue of notice, then the notice itself need not be issued to you. There was a provision like this in the excise law. There was no such option under the custom law, mind you. This was there in the service tax law, section 73(4)(a), which is now being deleted. It was there in the excise law, but it was never there in the customs law. But there was a provision saying that before the issue of notice, even when there is a fraud suppression, you go forward and say, I'm paying the duty or tax with interest and 1/4 penalty, don't issue a notice. So that option is now removed from all the three enactments. So in no enactment now, customs, excise and service tax, there is any option available to prevent a show cause notice if there is a fraud suppression. A show cause notice must come now. So one cannot go to them and say, well, don't issue me a notice. So that stage is gone, that option is gone. Now a notice has to be issued. When the notice is issued, you get the option of paying this 1/4 within 30 days of the issue of notice. Now, what is the difference between option 1 and option 2? Option 1 is 30 days within the issue of notice. Option number 2 is 30 days within the from the date of the adjudication order. That is the two options. One is 15%, other is 25%. Now, the first option has an added advantage, and that advantage is that the proceedings, the entire proceeding comes to an end. That means, in a notice nowadays you must have seen, there is a penalty proposed against the company, and there are penalties proposed against various employees, directors of the company. Now, when you opt to pay within 30 days of the issue of a show cause notice, the entire proceeding, that means including the penal action against the directors and employees, that comes to an end. In the second option, after adjudication, if you are paying, then only the main company or the assessee, that that company will have a reduction in the amount of penalty, but the remaining parties to the order who have been penalized, like directors or employees, those cases will have to go on, and there is no provision to mitigate that penalty. Now, the difference in the language, just to illustrate, option 1 and option 2. In option 1, when within 30 days you pay up the of the 30 days of the issue of notice, you pay up duty and interest. The wordings are, and all proceedings, in the end, all proceedings in respect of the said duty interest penalty shall be deemed to be concluded. So the proceedings are concluded. So the whole show cause notice itself gets over. So there is no notice left to be adjudicated. Whereas in the second option, where you are paying after the issue of adjudication order, what is happening is that only the amount of penalty liable to be paid by such person shall be 25% of the duties of the company. So it's only the penalty reduction. The other people who are involved in the notice are not get off. Now friends, these are the common amendments in the customs and central excise law with regard to the penalties. I will be dealing with the service tax provisions a little separately because they are a little different from the custom and excise provisions. Very quickly, I'll just run through some of the amendments in the central excise rules, which are all aimed at.
Sorry, it's 30 days from issue or 30 days of receipt?
One second, let me
Because it
just check
says
that.
date of communication.
One second, let me just check this.
And
Yeah, of the communication,
So it is receipt.
of the receipt, yes.
You
Yes.
use issue.
Yeah. Even if you are aware, like you've seen in the section itself, where it uses the word issue, even there the view taken by the courts is that it shall always be considered with the date of receipt. So, yeah. Now, what are the amendments on the excise side for manufacturers? The procedural amendments, which I have called them an ease of doing business. One is that